Good morning. Welcome to the month, the 4 weeks of shortest days. In the northern hemisphere. And today the sun is later because of all this cloud after so much rain. I got a lot of rain last night. I can show you some evidence here for it. We always celebrate rain here, mostly. In other places, they don't like rain. Oh, there's the water. There's more water here as well. In case you didn't believe me, I didn't go there to do that, but when I saw the opportunity, I did it. There we have one of our volunteers over there. Yesterday was International Volunteers Day. So Magdala has a great volunteer life. And volunteers give Magdala a lot of life, and the volunteers receive a lot of life for their lives. They give back from their lives. Especially the more mature volunteers come with a lot of wisdom, and then everybody is enriched in the exchange. Volunteering is something very, very beautiful. It's an expression of self-giving, of putting one's talents at the service of others. And it's what Mom and Dad are doing all the time in the kitchen and the house. Nobody's giving them a salary for it. And they are serving, building up lives, building up family, volunteering. Getting children to volunteer is a great thing. Even little children, would you like to volunteer to do this? It should be an important word in the vocabulary, the early vocabulary of a child. It's a big word, volunteer. To get a culture of volunteering going. It allows people to think about the others, about needs, about resolving needs, practical solutions to needs. Stepping up when there's a need. Generously stepping up. I'm going to avoid the clay, earthy spots today because of their soaked in water. Soaked maybe is too much because it's going to take a while more to soak all this dry ground to make it sodden wet. So Isaiah is guiding us these days, the first 2 weeks of Advent significantly, and a few other days during the rest of Advent. Isaiah is the prophet of Advent, the prophet of consolation, the prophet of goodness. And we love the imagery he offers us today, that consolation of God speaking to us. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples. You know, we have the mountains of Lebanon are not visible right now. And then Syria and Jordan down at the end of the lake. You have to take my word for it unless you remember that we saw that a number of times before. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples. A feast of rich food and choice wines, juicy, rich food and pure, choice wines. And there's one line actually that even touches me more emotionally is, on this mountain he will destroy the veil that veils all peoples. What is the veil that veils all peoples? The web that is woven over all nations. He will destroy death forever. This must be one of the most important biblical lines, oldest biblical lines about resurrection. Just thinking about it now. He will destroy death forever. This is Isaiah talking. This is long before the Hasmonean period, before the Maccabees, when the resurrection faith becomes very ripe and mature, emerges solidly in God's people, even though it's a very disputed issue. And the Sadducees hold on to the non-faith in the resurrection. And it's interesting because maybe they needed to read Isaiah. He will destroy death forever. Or how would they have imagined that text? He will destroy death forever. The Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. The reproach of his people he will remove. The reproach of his people. This is like a veil, right? He will remove the veil that veils all nations, all peoples. And how it has been veiling many peoples. I understand that I think it's almost like 500,000 people killed in the Ukraine war. 500,000 people. And we had a pilgrim that came a few years ago, and he walked from Austria through the Ukraine. And that was before the war. It's quite a few years ago now, but on that day it will be said, behold our God to whom we look to save us. So that means on that day of resurrection, on that day of the Messiah, for the hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain. That expression of laying on hands, and Jesus laid on the hands on the sick. And hands are laid on us in confirmation. This gesture of biblical blessing. He will lay his hands on this mountain. The blessing of God pouring down. And then just up the lake here, I can more or less give you a close location to it. Yeah, you see those trees there in the background? That darker area over the bush, that brush, you see there? Well, actually, that is the Nufkin Osar, so that's about halfway. That's where the Jesus boat is. That's about halfway up to Tabga, where we remember the account of the Gospels today, the multiplication of the loaves. Hey, I'm going to just get distracted for a second. My eye just fell on the Psalm, and connecting that with the words in Isaiah. I shall live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. This is obviously Psalm 23, and it echoes the promise of Isaiah. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And the shepherd is with the flock out in the mountain, you know. In verdant pastures he gives me repose. And you see the pastures are getting more and more verdant now. You see all that green. In verdant pastures he gives me repose. Beside restful waters he leads me. There's a herd of wild boar, a big family of them, that come over to the water just over there beyond, just at the edge of the brush every evening, and the dogs go crazy. And they must have been there this morning at 2:30 because the neighboring dogs were going crazy. So they're not familiar, these dogs, with the wild boar, and they react to them. In verdant pastures he gives me repose. Beside restful waters he leads me. He refreshes my soul. Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil. Even death, I fear no evil. As God has his hand on us. You spread the table before me in the sight of my foes. My cup overflows, rich choice wines. Only goodness and kindness follow me. This psalm is singing what Isaiah is promising a people that's really beaten down in the time of the exile. And he's communicating this beautiful vision. Can you hear the jackals? I wonder if I could see them. There are a bunch of them up there right now. Can you hear them at the distance? I see some cows up there, but they're not disturbed. So who knows where those jackals are? Under the bushes. Interesting. So what happens in the gospel today? Well, actually, the echo of this psalm and of Isaiah is there. Jesus walked by the Sea of Galilee. He went up on the mountain and sat down there, and great crowds came to him, having with him the lame, the blind, the deformed, the mute, and many others. They placed them at his feet, and he cured them. And when he did that, he usually laid hands on them, you know. The crowds were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the deformed made whole, the lame walking, the blind able to see, and they glorified the God of Israel. Jesus summoned his disciples and said, "My heart is moved with pity for the crowd, for they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry." So the disciples said to him, "Where can we even get enough bread in this deserted place to satisfy such a crowd?" 7 loaves. Actually, that miracle is usually remembered across the lake. It's not the one up here at Tabka, it's the one across the lake near Kursi. He ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. They took the 7 loaves and the fish, gave thanks, broke the loaves, and gave them to the disciples. They all ate and were satisfied. They picked up the fragments left over, 7 baskets full. Rich, choice food. The beautiful custom that we have from biblical times as we break bread, as we have meals together, to say a prayer of thanksgiving and praise to God, who's blessing us with so many benefits. And so we have the connection, like yesterday, Jesus was saying, the prophets desire to see this day. Blessed your eyes that see what you see. So he could have said that on the day of the multiplication of the loaves, the healing of the sick, and especially the resurrection of the dead. Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. People, let's leave it like that. It's turning out to be a glorious morning after all the rain. God bless you. See you later, alligators.